So Ilhan Omar said some offensive things. Yes, they were offensive things. There are a lot of people on the left saying, Tim, it's not offensive, it's fake. You don't get to decide who is offended by what. Therein lies the great problem that's so frustrating to me about the left, where they claim something is offensive. And look, the left, specific individuals on the left, all the time claim if something's offensive, then you shouldn't be allowed to say it, hate speech, yada, yada, yada. You don't get to decide what is offensive. When you get shut down or censored, it's wrong, but it's because you advocate for these rules. Now that Ilhan Omar is getting dragged because she repeatedly makes statements that many people view are anti-Semitic, they're claiming it's not fair. Okay, I'm going to say it one more time for everybody. You don't get to decide what is or isn't offensive or how things are interpreted. And I want to stress, Ilhan Omar didn't talk about Israeli policy. She hasn't made numerous comments saying, Israel's allocating X amount of funding towards their Iron Dome defense system that's being paid for by...
Look, all she's done to stir up the hornet's nest was to make claims that pro-Israel lobbyists influence U.S. policy and that some American politicians pledge loyalty to Israel.
We love Israel. We will fight for Israel 100%, 1,000%.
Nobody seems to know why such questions would be raised in the first place.
Okay, sure. You want to talk about specific things in Israel, I get it. I am sick of the obsession people have.
Wait, what did he say?
Okay, sure. You want to talk about specific things in Israel, I get it. I am sick of the obsession people have.
Yep, he said it. He said it, yep. He said it. He said it. And now, my friends, is an old shill trope.
I mean, it's just crazy. It's like this obsession by all these losers with Israel.
A hurtful one at that.
I am sick of the obsession people have.
This obsession by all these losers.
Obsession people have. Now, I want to mention this video is supposed to be funny, right? There's supposed to be a tinge of humor here. Wiccan community expresses outrage at Ilhan Omar's comments, anti-Semitic and unacceptable. Okay, you got the Wiccans mad. And I want to stress before reading on to excuse me, to all the people claiming that this is fake outrage. The woman literally tweeted that Israel hypnotizes the world, which is literally an old anti-Semitic trope about Jews hypnotizing and taking over.
Or it was about how the world watched and did nothing during that 2012 Israeli offensive in Gaza. But you know what? How about you decide?
I do want to ask you also about your comments on Israel, to remind people what you tweeted about Israel in 2012 during the offensive in Gaza. You wrote, Israel has hypnotized the world. May Allah awaken the people and help them see the evil doings of Israel. You've commented a lot since then, trying to explain what you meant by that. And I wonder just what your message is this morning as the first on our Game Changers series to Jewish Americans who find that deeply offensive.
Oh, that's really a regrettable way of expressing that. I don't know how my comments would be offensive to Jewish Americans. My comments precisely are addressing what was happening during the Gaza war. And I am clearly speaking about the way that the Israeli regime was conducting itself in that war.
Okay, I get it. You want to be offensive? You're allowed to be. I do not believe you should be censured, okay? But what do you expect is going to happen when you keep doing it? And then it's crazy when people think that they can talk about these things over and over again, offend people, and then go, I don't think it's offensive. These are the rules you made, not us.
Well, actually...
I know about this firsthand. The Canadian Jewish Congress pressed the Liberal government to have hate speech laws enacted, and they were. And for years, those laws in Canada, such as Section 13 of the Canadian Human Rights Act, were used almost exclusively by the Jews against anti-Semitic losers. I say losers because calling them criminals isn't really accurate.
What? Why is everybody looking at me?
But hey, why should only Jews get to use those laws to go after their political enemies?
And this was another Canadian heritage moment. Okay, now I know that was Canadian history, but I think it's still relevant because they're only trying to get what was already established in the States.
Let's read the story. Why are the Wiccans angry? And Trump responded to it. I got that story pulled up. One of the oldest and largest Wiccan organizations in the U.S. blasted Minnesota Democratic Rep. Ilhan Omar's controversial comments regarding Israel. The statements of Rep. Ilhan Omar were anti-Semitic and unacceptable. Through our members, a collective voice shared their shock at such hurtful anti-Semitic rhetoric, and that this discriminatory, prejudiced language is unacceptable from anyone, especially any public figure. Horror. Janine Nelson said in a statement to the Daily Caller News Foundation. Nelson serves as a spokeswoman for the Covenant of the Goddess, a nonprofit religious organization that seeks to foster cooperation among Wiccans and witches. Across the globe, founded in 1975, the Covenant of the Goddess represents practitioners of the pagan beliefs that predated Christian Europe. Members include those who identify as a Wiccan, witch, or pagan. Their statement comes after the House of Representatives on Thursday voted 407 to 23 on a resolution condemning bigotry of all kinds. The resolution was brought forward following a string of comments from Omar that many lawmakers, including members of her own party, considered to be anti-Semitic. Omar, one of the first two Muslim women elected to Congress, has come under fire for making a series of anti-Semitic tropes, such as suggesting support for Israel was based off of financial support from pro-Israel lobbying groups, and later accused supporters of Israel of holding allegiance to a foreign country.
America first. America first.
Listen, you can criticize. Here's the way I see it. Every time you make a statement like this, in and of themselves, you're kind of just like, why? You're getting, when Ilhan Omar said it's all about the Benjamins, baby, people were like, whoa, what are you trying to say there?
Definitely not follow the money.
Like, are you being anti-Semitic? Here's the thing. Insinuating that people are in it for the money isn't anti-Semitic. Insinuating that people are in it for the money coming from Israel is still not anti-Semitic. However, when you start from Israel's hypnotizing the world and people say, dude, that is like basically Nazi propaganda. There was like comics I saw.
The amount of cherry picking that the media came out with after this whole thing to prove this narrative that I am somehow an anti-Semite was beautiful. Please keep doing it. It's hilarious.
Then you add foreign allegiance, dual loyalty, and being all about money. Then people are going to be like, what the is wrong with you?
How about that?
Okay, let me stress a point. First, you're allowed to criticize foreign nations. And again, even each of these things on their own, I'll get it. I'll give you some leeway. But how could you come to me, and I'm getting messages from people like, Tim, you need to understand it's not anti-Semitism, it's about Israel. It's like, I am so annoyed by the people who don't understand there's a conflict in the Middle East and 3 countries getting tons of money.
Well, said a mouthful there. Let's just focus on this for a moment.
And 3 countries getting tons of money.
Because if we get into the whole conflict thing and who historically has been the aggressors in the Middle East,
The keywords are preemptive strike.
this video would just be way too long. It is true that other nations receive US aid money, except the odd thing is, why is it Israel that's always the biggest recipient? And the only recipient to receive the whole lump sum at the beginning of each year so that they can collect the money off the interest. All of this despite having a good first world economy with a good GDP. That's like making the Netherlands your biggest recipient of foreign aid. And of course, let us never forget what James had to say on the matter.
That's only the foreign aid bill. Look at all the other trade compacts, economic assistance, military assistance. I'm saying this to you right now. Israel gets approximately $15 billion a year from the American taxpayers. That $15 billion is $30,000 for every man, woman, and child. And people in my district are losing their pension benefits. So I was targeted big time.
And they talk about the lobby. Sure, fine. The issue is, your free speech is not being silenced.
Now, former Congressman James Traficant goes on the record in his first interview since his release from prison.
So don't expect anything from me. I don't like hate speech, and you don't get to choose who is or is not offended. But let's see what Donald Trump had to say. On the Daily Caller, Democrats are now anti-Jewish, anti-Israel party. President Donald Trump flamed House Democrats after the chamber voted on a resolution condemning nearly all forms of religious phobia spawned by highly contentious comments made by Ilhan Omar. I want to stop. I want to point something out too. I will say this. I personally believe Ilhan Omar is an anti-Semite.
Shocking.
I do. I don't think it's just because she said these things. I do not hold each of these individual statements to be anti-Semitic on their own. It's a combination of things. And when you add that the Women's March, people who are defending tooth and nail Ilhan Omar, people like Linda Sarsour, who we know is an anti-Semite, because Tablet Magazine and the New York Times confirmed that the organizers of the Women's March were getting in the face of a Jewish woman and ranting about anti-Jewish conspiracy theories. Why would I act under the assumption that Ilhan Omar is not an anti-Semite?
I think that's a balanced way of doing journalism, you tell me.
Now look, I don't want to do a guilt by association.
But he has, and he will.
But I want to say, if Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is willing to speak at the Women's March when many other people on the left, Democrats and celebrities and activists, refused because of the scandal over anti-Semitism, but Ocasio-Cortez wants to do it, and she's defending Omar, and Omar is associated with this new group of Justice Democrat-endorsed politicians, and she repeatedly makes these statements. It is absolutely, okay, we'll go here, and I'll get to Trump's comments. It's funny, I guess, to see the narrative from the left about hate speech being flipped on its head.
It's actually more of a flip situation. Yes, definitely.
And now the rules they've put forward and the rhetoric they've repeatedly pushed about certain things being offensive are being applied to them. And this is why I'm against censorship.
But hey, why should only Jews get to use those laws to go after their political enemies?
You want to criticize Israel? I will help you do it. By all means. I believe you have a right to speak. I don't agree with you, but I will defend to the death your right to say these things.
Did you guys catch that?
You want to criticize Israel? I will help you do it. By all means. I believe you have a right to speak. I don't agree with you, but I will defend to the death your right to say these things.
I don't know about you, but all I heard was...
You want to criticize Israel? I don't agree with you, but I will defend to the death your right to say these things. But you, on the left, are the ones restricting the goddamn speech of everyone else, and now you want us to come to your defense. That's ridiculous. You must be very desperate to come to the free speech people for help when you are on the other end of that spectrum. You will get no sympathy from me. But I will say, yes, I will argue in favor of your free speech. Just don't expect me to get on my platform and start talking about how it's so wrong that people are mad they're offended by what you said. They haven't shut you down. They've just criticized you. That's them showing you the door, to quote XKCD. But let's see what Trump had to say. He said, I thought yesterday's vote by the House was disgraceful, Trump said, adding, the Democrats have become an anti-Israel party. They have become anti-Jewish, and I thought that vote was a disgrace, and so does everybody else if you get an honest answer. The Democrats have become an anti-Israel party. They have become the anti-Jewish party, and that's too bad, Trump continued. Excuse me. Trump's comments come after the House voted to pass a Democratic-sponsored resolution which condemns bigotry. The resolution was originally intended to target Omar's recent comments, saying that members of Congress are pushed to pledge allegiance to Israel, interpreted by many as an anti-Semitic trope. This is the crazy thing. Omar keeps making these comments where it's like, dude, what are you doing? Stop. First, hypnotizing Israel. It's like, dude, it's all about the Benjamins. Whoa, okay, chill. Then she says, why should I be expected? She accuses people of having foreign allegiance, which is a dual loyalty trope.
As the president meets with Prime Minister Netanyahu today, I urge the president to stop all this talk about settlements in Jerusalem.
Then, at an event with Rashida Tlaib, she says, why am I getting criticism for criticizing those who have foreign allegiance?
What does Stone Mountain, Georgia, have to do with Israel? What I was doing was servicing the needs of my constituents. And I was not allowed to do that because I did not toe the line on U.S. policy for Israel.
And it's like, you're doing it again, dude. We get it. Not every time you criticize people for these reasons it's anti-Semitic, but she has like 5 statements now, and her associations do play a factor in that. More importantly, she came out later and said something about people expect her to pledge allegiance to Israel. And it's like, oh my God, dude, that is a direct mischaracterization of what's happening. Absolutely.
The First Amendment of the U.S. Constitution guarantees citizens the right to criticize the American government. However, if you criticize a foreign government, you might get in trouble. In 26 U.S. states, government contractors are forbidden from boycotting Israel. In Texas, employees are required to sign an oath saying that they do not and will not boycott Israel or engage in any activity intended to sow economic harm. Well, one speech pathologist refused to sign the oath and was fired.
So, as a quote, I want to talk about the political influence in this country that says it's okay for people to push for allegiance to a foreign country. I want to ask why it is okay for me to talk about the influence of the NRA or fossil fuel industries or big pharma and not talk about a powerful lobbying group that is influencing politics. That's not it.
Except that is it.
Not it at all. It's because in 2012, you claimed Israel hypnotized the world. You have just predisposed yourself to people assuming you believe negative stereotypes about the state of Israel. Old World War II propaganda.
Does context matter? I don't know.
Then, from there, that's the launching point and point of reference, you went on to make other statements that have repeatedly offended people. Now, in my opinion, I'm not Jewish. I'm not offended. And I also want to point out, to be fair, I do think certain politicians and pundits are really stretching this hard. But my main gripe here is that, for one, you don't get to choose who is offended or why. Those are your rules, not mine. So I'll be damned if you're going to try and pull a double standard now that you have actively sought the suppression of speech from other people. Never going to happen.
Speaking of...
A double standard.
Feminist. Stupid social justice warrior.
Islam.
Feminist. Stupid social justice warrior.
Islam.
Feminist. Stupid social justice warrior.
Islam.
I am sick of the obsession people have.
I'm sorry about that, to all involved. I was just trying to make a point.
Never going to happen. The resolution, however, was watered down by Democratic leaders to condemn bigotry in all its forms and did not name Omar specifically. Nearly 24 Republicans voted against the resolution on the grounds that it was watered down from its original intent to condemn Omar's remarks specifically. House Minority Whip Steve Scalise said in a statement afterwards, a watered-down condemnation of hate does little to alleviate the hurt caused by Rep. Omar's continuous anti-Semitic rhetoric and beliefs, adding, this diluted condemnation only highlights the real problem in the Democratic caucus. Speaker Pelosi awarded a known anti-Semite with a coveted spot on the Foreign Affairs Committee. They kicked Steve King out. I got no sympathy for that guy. Ilhan Omar shouldn't be allowed either. It's not about me. It's not about what I believe. Because honestly, my opinion is much more tepid. I think the Republicans and Democrats are taking it too far. But it's not about me. It's about you wanting rules, and then you come out and say rules for thee, not for me. Sorry, ain't gonna happen. When you get dragged, it's because this is what you wanted. End of story. You have a right to speak. No one's stopping you. They're just calling you an asshole and showing you the door. That's the rhetoric they want to use when it comes to free speech, and I will present to you with the exact same thing. So you know what? I'll say this. When it comes to them actually censuring her over her speech, am I going to be angry? Well, here's the problem. Were they upset that Steve King was removed from his committees for the things he said? No, they praised it.
Do you think that Representative Steve King should be censured?
Yes.
So why should I bat an eye when it happens to them too? I've got no sympathy for Steve King, and don't expect me to come, to Ilhan Omar's aid when people get mad at her for the things she says. I'm out.
Then you see what the media says about everybody. You see how they call Jordan Peterson all day and night alt-right. The alt-right hates him.
Yeah.
And this narrative is used to strip people of their income, to remove them from public discourse.
The way I define Jewish power is the ability to silence discussion on Jewish power.